figure out, what is my value? How can I enhance that value? How can I effectively present that value? Really, when it comes right down to it, and this is the heart of any entrepreneurial venture, how can I add value to other people's lives?
Welcome to Drop and Give Me 20, where you learn keys to entrepreneurial success as Lindsey Germono interviews business owners with military backgrounds on what works and what doesn't. Listen as they focus on the stories, both challenges and wins, that military entrepreneurs have faced in growing their businesses.
Welcome to another episode of Drop and Give Me 20. I'm very excited today. I get to chat with Kevin Bemel, who is the founder and president of the Bemel Company. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Lindsey. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for coming on the Drop and Give Me 20 podcast.
It is my pleasure.
So we chatted for like an hour a while back about this series, and I explained to you that, I really wanted to work on a segment that was tailored to those active duty service members that might be considering getting out of the military and pursuing the dream of entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
And that's when you and I started kicking around some ideas. And I would love for this segment to really be a piece that can help influence or motivate and also educate those listeners that might fall in that bracket. So as we begin, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your time in the service and what you're up to these days?
Sure. So I actually started out in life as an entrepreneur in Los Angeles. I spent 20 years in the real estate business, and a couple of different businesses during that time, and had a great career. I used to travel all over the country. I went up to Alaska twice on really bizarre real estate gigs and had a terrific time doing that. And I was also very tangentially involved in the film business during that time as well. So that my roots are in entrepreneurship. And then as a result of 9/11, so I ended up joining the military. Specifically, I joined the Navy as a chaplain, and that's a whole long story in itself that I won't get into. But I spent the last 10 years in the military. 6 were on active duty. I did over 3 years with the Marine Corps in Okinawa, and then I spent about 2.5 years with naval aviation in Lemoore, California. And after that, I got out off of active duty and went into the reserve. So I'm still a reservist, currently with Naval Special Warfare. And coming back to civilian life in Los Angeles, I had to make that fundamental choice that every veteran has to make. So am I going to go get a job and work for someone else? Or was I going to start another business and in my case, go back to my roots, so to speak, working for myself. And, it didn't take me a whole lot of time to decide that really I wanted to go back into some kind of entrepreneurial venture. Real estate was not going to be it, although a lot of people were saying, well, you're going to go back into real estate, it's such a great business and blah, blah, blah. I'd kind of done what I wanted to do there. And so initially, I connected with another veteran, actually a Vietnam War era veteran, and we put together a program to train veterans to start their own businesses. We called it an entrepreneurship bootcamp. And unfortunately, through a series of missteps with our third partner, that venture didn't work out. But I really liked that idea. And so that really has been the core, if you will, of what I've done since I've been back in civilian life. I've really focused my business on helping veterans really do one of two things: either find a high-paying job or go into some kind of entrepreneurial venture. And the reason I say high-paying jobs is because when you're at that level working for someone, what you do is very, very similar to what an entrepreneur does. So there's not a whole lot of variance in how you market yourself, how you decide what you're going to do, really the steps that you go through to get yourself where you want to go in either arena.
I want to go back because you mentioned that you were in the real estate industry first before joining the military. How old were you when you joined the military? I don't want to be personal, but like I'm just calculating if you were in the commercial real estate.
I'm laughing because when I went up in front of what's called the CARE board, this is the board that decides whether you're going to be a chaplain in the Navy. So all but 5 out of the 6 people on the board said, well, gosh, you're old. Why do you think you should be doing this? So I was 46
wow, okay.
I went, I was actually technically 45 when I took my, oath of office, so to speak. But a month later, I turned 46. And so when I went to training, I was 46 years old. I was the second or third oldest person in my class. And I was certainly older than the chiefs that were training me.
So you can really speak to us about what life is like as a civilian. And then you go into the military and now you're reservist. And I'm sure that helps you in your connections with, your clients that work with you at the Bemel company. But I can't imagine, I can, but the type of stories that you could tell us on that. And I think that's excellent too, because it's such a unique angle for you. I know when we were talking last time, I started to ask you, Kevin, really what makes you different than some of the folks that might be in your, current line of work. And we chatted a lot about that, where you felt like you had that experience as a civilian and first and a military now. Right.
So, one of the things that I emphasize with my clients is in many ways, there is this military civilian divide. It's both cultural and it's linguistic. So, if I talk to someone in civilian life and I say, MOC, they're thinking mock, which has a meaning in civilian life that's completely different from military occupation code. So if a military person says, well, my mock was a 13B artilleryman, you might as well be speaking Chinese to the civilian because they have no idea. And this is really a significant difference in American society to even, probably 30 years ago, certainly to 50 years ago. When you consider coming out of World War II, something like 8 to 10% of the population had spent time in uniform, and probably fully 25, 30% or more were in some way connected with what we now call the defense industries, whether it's, the Department of the DOD, which of course didn't exist in World War II, but was subsequent to it, or some sort of defense contractor. So they knew the language of the military. People today don't. And likewise, people in the military, generally speaking, don't know the language of civilian business. They may know, slang, lingo that's, current in society. But when it comes to business, they don't know that language either. And so bridging that cultural divide, that language divide, if you will, is probably, I would say it's one of the 2 most significant challenges that every veteran faces. And so having someone who has done both successfully, that really, and that's what we were talking about before, that I think is really, when we talk about a unique value proposition or a unique sales proposition, a USP or a UVP. So that's my UVP, is being able to be that translator and the one who can train a veteran how to be able to do that successfully.
But on the same side, you're not a veteran placement, recruitment type of company. You're working one-on-one with that veteran. Like you're helping them one-on-one develop that strategy and that voice in teaching them, some of the, language and that area of disconnect so that they can process through that and get that high paying job or go through entrepreneurship, whatever that goal is for them.
Right. That's correct. I don't place veterans in a job. It's sort of this may have been a saying of Jesus even, which is funny because I'm a rabbi, but, give a man a fish, you've, fed him for a night. Teach a man to fish, you've fed him forever, right? So what I'm really doing is teaching veterans to fish in that context. So I teach them 5-step process that they can use over and over again throughout their careers. I describe it as kind of an endless spiral staircase. So it's only 5 steps, but after you go through the 5 steps the first time, you're going to, in essence, go back to step 1, but not step 1 at the bottom of the ladder. Step 1 now at a higher level than where you started. And so you keep spiraling through this process, because with the taking of each step, you learn more about yourself, more about the civilian business world, more about how to market yourself effectively, more about the companies that can best use your skills, your experience, your knowledge. And so as you learn to do each one of those things better, you keep going higher and higher and higher. So it's that 5-step process that I train a veteran to use, and to use effectively for as long as they're going to have a civilian career. That's really the key.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you about that 5-step process. So when they get back to the step, does it go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they go back to the first step? So they're building upon it every time they get back to that number of step or whatever. That's like if I'm at the base and I start at 1, when I get at 1 again, I'm just kind of building on top of that theme for 1, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's of course not quite so literally circular, because just real quickly, I'll run you through the 5 steps. So the first step is understanding your purpose and your personal mission that's going to replace the mission that you lost when you left active duty in the military, and then setting goals that will help you achieve that mission. So that's step number 1. And then step number 2 is developing your UVP, your unique value proposition, because that's really what expresses your highest and best use in the marketplace, to use a real, super economic real estate term. Okay, and then 3 is establishing contacts within companies and organizations that can most highly benefit from your UVP, right? Because the more an organization can benefit from what you bring to the table, the more highly you're going to be compensated. So, and this is, you can see, by the way, that it works exactly the same way whether you are looking for a high-paying job or whether you're an entrepreneur, because you're going to be doing the same thing. What is it? How do I want to impact the world? What do I uniquely bring to the table? Or what is my product, if I'm going to sell a product, uniquely bring to the table? Who can benefit from it, right? And so those are the first 3 steps. And then step number 4 is learning how to effectively present your UVP to those who can benefit most from it, right? So that's the marketing phase. Self-marketing if you're looking for a high-paying job, but marketing if you're in entrepreneurship. And the concepts really aren't any different between the two, especially these days with social media, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And the 5th step is learning how to conduct a meeting and how to negotiate. So if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to be able to make a sales presentation. You've got to be able to convey the value, understand your potential client's needs, right? If you're looking to get a high-paying job, it's really no different. They're called interviews in the job hunting world, but interview is a poor term because it sounds like, oh, please, sir, may I have a job? It's like, well, that's not the right way to present yourself. As kind of, I describe it as, being a beggar. Look, when you're at that level, you're bringing value to the table. If the company doesn't want to see that, you don't want to work there, right? Yeah. So while you may be able to figure out some way of sort of cravenly closing the job deal, you really don't want to be there, because 3 months later, you're going to be super unhappy that that's what you did. So you need to be able to conduct a meeting to discuss a job, I call it, as opposed to an interview. But it's really, again, it's not any different than what a business owner does in talking to his or her clients and showing them the benefits of what their product or service will bring to their table, right? And then negotiating just the terms of the transaction, whether it's a job or whether it's a sale of a product or service. So it's those 5 steps. But as you go through them, you're constantly refining. So as you get to the point where you're marketing and you're doing presentations and you're closing transactions to sell your product or service, but at the same time, you're figuring out more about who you are as an individual, what your purpose is, what your mission is. Mm-hmm. Your goals are going to change. Mm-hmm. So one of the things, my first goal as someone working with veterans to help them achieve success in civilian life was to train a battalion of service members in the skills they needed to successfully transition, right? So a battalion, depending on what war you're talking about, is somewhere around 800, maybe 1,300 people. And I was doing my summing up of goals a few months ago, and I realized, wow, bang, I've already met, that goal. So as part of my own 5-step spiral, if you will, I needed to set another goal. So now my goal is to, train, mentor, coach a division of veterans to get what I say is, their share of the American dream, right? We defended our fellow citizens' ability to get a part of the American dream. I know we took an oath to defend the Constitution and all of that. I'm not diminishing that at all. But what does that fundamentally mean in the daily lives of our fellow citizens? Well, it means that they have the opportunity to get a part of the American dream. That's what the Constitution is there to do. It's to give us that ability. So now we're out of the military. Now it's our turn to do what we can for ourselves in grabbing a share of that American dream. And so that's my goal now, is to help, a total of 19,000 people, 19,000 veteran service members do that. That's my own personal spiral. So these things keep working, higher and higher and higher as we go along.
That's a lot of people.
It is. It is. It's completely doable.
I have a couple questions. One, how long, when somebody starts working with you on this 5-step journey, how long would you guesstimate that, you could, if that person was interested in this, what's that time span look like? How long does it take for them to kind of get on their feet and ready to either get to that high paying job or, ready to launch their business?
Right. So that really depends on the individual. For someone who is very self-disciplined and very committed, they can work through this process in 60 to 90 days successfully.
Yes. And,
the thing is, a lot of veterans are looking for that sort of, magic wand, if you will. Mm-hmm. So there's no magic here. What I've done is I've taken a very complex process and boiled it down to the essential steps so that someone can focus just on those things that are really going to generate the action that they want. That's, if there's any magic in these steps, it's that when you work them, they will produce results, as opposed to so many other things that veterans do. So coming out of, it seems like they change the names, every year, whatever the transition assistance program is called, today. Mm-hmm. So one of the main things they tell veterans to do is to work job boards. So that's a completely useless thing to do. So only a very small percentage of people actually get jobs through working job boards. And it's because the numbers are just against it.
What's a job board?
So a job board it's a website you go to and you plug in the kind of job that you're looking for, and it gives you listings of companies that have that kind of job available. And then generally speaking, you apply online, you submit a resume and cover letter, and then, you sort of hope and pray that you're going to get a call back. Right. And you're going to get a chance for either, a phone interview or face-to-face meeting or something like that. So while a huge percentage of job hunters, pursue jobs using job boards, actually the percentage of people who get jobs through job boards is very, very small. It's estimated that perhaps 4% of people get a job through using job boards. In fact, I read one source that said he thinks it's closer to 0.4%.
Wow. And
right?
I imagine they get discouraged, and then that turns into its own beast too, which you can probably speak about, is that kind of depression on, wow, no one's hiring me. I don't feel like I can bring anything to the table. I've put out on my resume to 100 different job boards, what's going on? And that can be very frustrating, I'm sure.
That's exactly right. And that's another bad aspect of job boards is they tend to create that because, you have on average, I think it's between 180 and 205 people applying for every job. And yet typically the hiring manager is only going to talk to maybe 4 to 6 people. Right. Wow. Yeah. And here's the other thing. So only about 7% of people make an effort to have an internal advocate at a company they want to work for. But 40% of people that company will hire will come through an internal advocate in that company. And between 55 and 60% of people a company hires will be people who have been referred to the company, either by someone inside or someone outside the company that the company trusts. So you can see that your prospects of getting what you want are geometrically larger when you work through relationships. So that's why I say someone can apply the 5 steps and in 60 to 90 days see tremendous results from what they're doing if they're disciplined. So typically the average person working on their business or job, they consider themselves unemployed. Right? Mm-hmm. So the reality is no one's unemployed in this economy anymore. Someone may not have a job, but if you don't have a job, your employment is finding a job or starting your business.
Right. You're doing something. When you were sharing about the 5 different steps that you consult and you work with veterans on, which area in your experience does a veteran struggle most?
I think it's somewhat individual specific, but I would say probably the 2 areas they most struggle in is in creating those relationships. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the reasons is that in the military, when you go to a particular unit, it's just assumed you're going to be working together as part of a team. So there's no necessity of reaching out and creating relationships for most people in military until you get to a pretty senior level. So if you're, an E7 or above, or if you're probably maybe at the 04 level, certainly at the 05, 06 level and above, those points you really need to be conscious about creating effective relationships because you're getting to such a small point of the pyramid that in order for you to further advance your career, a lot of it is going to be because of the personal relationships that you have. So you probably bring some skills in those areas and, you're less fearful of them. But for the typical person in the military, they don't really have to worry about that at all. And so they come into civilian life and it's like, wait, I have to approach strangers and tell them what a great guy or a great gal I am? I can't do that. First of all, I'm not that egotistical. It's like, okay, well, look, I get you. Okay. Look, I'm not advocating anybody be, a megalomaniac. Mm-hmm. But by the same token, we have to learn how to honestly sit down with another person and convey to them our unique value proposition in a way that gets them to take some kind of action. And that's a hard skill to develop without, some practice. And so a lot of what I do is, drilling my clients so that they just get comfortable with a process. And so that actually speaks to the other major struggle that I see among veterans. And it's actually not one of the 5 steps, but it's in essence what undergirds all of them. And that's mindset. So I just read something yesterday that really astonished me. It's very, very sad, frankly. And that is that only 30 to 35% of veterans think that civilians really care anything about us.
Wow.
Now, it was from a credible source. I'm not going to say what the source was because I don't want to, impugn anybody's integrity. I am somewhat skeptical about that statistic because I can tell you in my own life, I have not found that to be the case at all. The vast majority of civilians are absolutely supportive of veterans. I could be, I was in a liquor store the other day and talking to the woman behind the counter about a particular brand of whiskey that she was selling. And I happened to mention that I was a veteran, and she stopped everything. And she said, I just want you to know, I'm very appreciative of your service.
That's nice.
Now, that was absolutely sincere.
Did you tell her you were a rabbi?
I did after that.
I'm going to need 2 bottles of whiskey. I'm a rabbi.
Right? Yeah, I'll take the Jack Daniels in there. But unfortunately, the belief that civilians don't care about us shows up in how we relate to civilians. And let's face it, if someone were to approach us with a bad attitude toward the military, would we want to work with that person?
No.
No, of course not. If we're going into a situation, let's say we're, dealing with our clients in our business and where we've got what we think is a great service or a great product, but somehow they sense from us that, I don't really like you, they're not going to buy what we're offering.
So, Kevin, something that I was reading the other day was this topic of entitlement. And I guess I can see both sides where the entitlement of the military service member, coming out of the military and feeling like, well, I'm owed a job or I'm owed this. What are your thoughts about that subject or about this kind of concept in general? And do you see that playing into or factoring into, that 5-step process that you work with veterans on when you're trying to help them place in a position or, start their business?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. It definitely has an impact on the mindset aspect that undergirds going through the 5 steps. And I should say very quickly that this idea of entitlement is not something that's only affecting people coming out of the military. I think it's an issue throughout our society. However, focusing on military folks, which is what we're doing here. So when you think about it, the idea of entitlement is a very disempowering belief because it's really saying that in the case of military people, I decided to enter into or, go into the military for my specific reasons, patriotic reasons, to get out of a bad, family situation, to be able to get a good education, whatever those reasons were, all the above. Right? I made that decision based on my, criteria, if you will. Okay. And now that I'm getting out, you, my fellow citizens, should take care of me. Mm-hmm. It's a non sequitur. And the reality is most people don't want to deal with someone who has a sort of entitlement mentality because, first of all, the person sounds needy. So if you're so needy, what are you really bringing to my table?
Well, and
right?
It doesn't work in the civilian world or either. So like if we look at it from the other side and you have, your experience in the civilian world before you became into the military, I'm the same way. I worked in a huge corporation before I really got into this whole military community. That doesn't work there either. You can't come into a room and go, I'm owed this. I mean, people are going to just boo you out. And so I think it's really important when we're talking to this community, veterans that are, getting out or looking at this next phase of their life is, understanding those 5 steps that you mentioned earlier and how to effectively present that so that it doesn't backfire. Maybe they don't realize that they're like that. So, you working with them on that, I think is extremely advantageous. I hate reading things about, entitlement and this and that, what we're owed. And I'm like, you know what? We all work hard. We're all owed something,
Yeah. I see this you see this in marketing pitches all the time, not just for military people, but in general, get the job you deserve, get the relationship you deserve. It's like, you know what? If I'm really honest with myself, My life is so much better than what I deserve. Reality is I'm doing this new thing called, you write a love letter to your wife, once a week. Right. And one of the things I put in the letter I wrote to her this morning that I hid on her pillow, she'll get it, when she gets home tonight, is you're much, much more than I ever deserved. So we just have this sort of fanciful notion that we all should be treated like, kings and queens. But that's really all that does is it puts us in this box that's really, really hard to break out of. So we deserve exactly what we're willing to go out and earn. That's what we deserve. And so we need to be effective in learning how to do that and how to figure out, what is my value? How can I enhance that value? How can I effectively present that value? How can I really, when it comes right down to it, and this is the heart of any entrepreneurial venture, how can I add value to other people's lives?
Right. Yeah.
And if I think I deserve something, I'm not going to be able to add value to people's lives because I'm too concerned with what I'm getting out of this.
Well, at the end of the day, you shouldn't go into business for you. It should be, here's what I'm good at, here's what I want to do, and I'm doing it to help or to assist or provide a service, or it's not about you. It's about what you're forming to help or elaborate on the traits that you're great at and extending that out into onto others. So we see that a lot and why businesses fail. And you get this cocky business woman that walks in a room and she's stomping and, hear me roar. And we're like, well, why should we hear you roar? What are you doing to help others? And, why should I even do business with you? I don't want that in my life. So I see that a lot when we're doing our marketing coaching sessions, when we work with advertising and marketing, is you can't just go into a room or even in advertising as, I'm really great, you should hire me.
Right.
We're not, we can't all be the Gary Vaynerchuk, although he's certainly earned his, made his way up to that where he is now. But I want to thank you for coming on, Kevin. And I really think that, your expertise as somebody who is civilian first, and then you're joining the military in your mid 40s. Brings a lot to, and you can testify and speak about what that transition looks like. So I want to give the listeners the opportunity to reach out to you one-on-one and connect with you and continue these conversations. Where can they reach you? Where can they find you?
Right. So the easiest place is to just go to my website. It's real simple to find. My last name, Bemel, B as in Bravo, E-M as in military, E-L.com. So just Bemel.com. And I have a contact page there, and you can get a hold of me there. You can also find me on social media. Look for Kevin Bemel on LinkedIn. Look for me I have a Facebook page, and I also have a Twitter feed. I'm pretty active on Twitter, being a writer. So that's my, home away from home, so to speak. And reach out to me in any of those places with questions. And I do maintain a Facebook group that's just for people in the military, where we can talk about, what does it mean to be a success in civilian life? How do you do that? What are the resources you need? So that group is called Passport to Success Military Vets. There's no cost to being a part of the group. It's completely free. So if you want to join in on the discussions there, feel free. But by all means, if there's something I can do to help out any of your listeners, I'm very happy to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So again, it's Bemel.com, Bemel, and you have a Facebook page. The handle is Navy Rabbi.
That's right.
Your Twitter handle is at Kevin Bemel, and then you're of course on LinkedIn, Kevin Bemel, and then I may want to join that Facebook group too. So I will definitely see what you got going on in there. Drop and Give Me 20 has a closed Facebook group too. So maybe we can find some synergy within the two groups. So
that'd be great.
Thank you again for your time. And I'm really happy to have you on and kind of talk about this subject and kick it around a little bit, working with folks that are getting out of the military, whether it's going into entrepreneurship or getting that high paying job is, the American dream. We want to work, we want a slice of our pie. So thank you so much for your time and coming on the Drop and Give Me 20 podcast.
You're welcome, Lindsey. I really enjoyed being a part of it.
Thanks for listening to Drop and Give Me 20, brought to you by Germono Advertising Company in Norfolk, Virginia. Please visit our podcast in iTunes, click on subscribe, and leave us a review. Your support goes a long way. When you subscribe and leave reviews, it helps the guests on our show as well. Jump in and let us know what you think. You can also follow all of our guests on the Drop and Give Me 20 Facebook page. We have Instagram and Twitter. Those handles are Give Me 20 Podcast. I'm your host, Lindsey Germono, and I appreciate you listening to the show.